serve as a decoder ring for all that bootstrap bullshit they keep trying to sell us. That's right. Whenever you hear some well-paid commentator telling folks that the answer to all their problems is just to work harder, what they really saying is, I don't care about your circumstances. Your circumstances don't matter to me. You don't matter to me. Whenever you hear some rich asshole from a think tank go on and on about the virtues of the free market while ignoring those ill-affected by any semblance of a free market, what they're really saying is, as long as I ain't gotta see them, as long as I ain't gotta be them, fuck them. And I'm sorry if that sounds crass, but that's about as accurate a translation as I can give. And this song is about that unfortunate translation. So the next time you turn on your radio or your television or go on the internet and you hear some fool say, let the market sort it out, well then you'll know what it is they really saying. You'll know what it is they really saying.
I do not feel that I was born corrupted, as I do not believe in original sin. However, I have been corrupted by life, by circumstance, and by my own foolishness. These things trouble me the most. I want to be pure, but I fall so short. Corrosion, rust, death, and failure haunt my every breath and step, and yet I live and write while corrosion bites. It shows there's some strength in me. Possibly, maybe, decidedly, I will persist. The end.
Get yourself together before it's too late. What the fuck am I doing here for? Jesus Christ, it's Christmas Eve or something or other. Hey, I'm South Philly Joe, and someone told me to be here. You know who it probably was. He's getting back from the Chinese restaurant, you know, Weinstein on Christmas or something like that. I don't know. But apparently I have to be calling somebody right now, and I think he's here. So I'm gonna go find him. His name is David Price. So, no, hold it. Is Brian here? I think he's here. Yeah. All right. I'll see you guys later before I start choking. All right.
Brian, is that a COVID cough?
It might
you
sound
okay?
like it. You have to get last week's shit off. of
Listen,
here.
man. Listen. Yeah, no, I was just wondering because I don't want it to be a COVID cough. I'd worry about that. The other thing I was going to say, did you know that Joe was going to be on first?
I had no
didn't.
idea until like 3 minutes ago that he was going to be on first. Yeah.
Really? Yeah. Well, you just got to hold it. It's good because were you at a Chinese restaurant, by the way?
No, I wasn't.
Or
I
is that
haven't been
just
to a
some Joe
Chinese restaurant.
saying,
I actually don't like
he's
Chinese
a pretty
food all that much.
But he's a pretty racist guy. I mean, in terms of not just towards black. I mean, he's South Philly. I mean, what can you say?
He's South Philly,
But,
Joe. He just tells it like it is. He's just that type.
yeah,
of
well,
guy.
you don't do a very good. You don't do a very good.
He's actually a New York
imitation.
accent. Most people, it's more like Brooklyn or the Bronx, but you do. What you can
Brooklyn,
do.
Bronx, South Philly. Hey, it's
It's
all urban,
almost
right?
the
It's all
same.
urban.
They
it
bastardize
is.
the language, I suppose.
So, you're on break, huh? A little break.
Yeah.
From teaching.
When
did you go back?
Dave, the last week felt like a month and a half because I'm just trying to get through it like anybody else, and just
Well,
one of those
I've told
things.
you before. I mean, it's been what now? Starting year 11 coming up. 11 years that I haven't been in the classroom, and I know Christmas, the week before Christmas, was always tough anyway with kids, and people would look at you and say, "What are you crazy?" Little kids. I said, "No, high school kids too. It doesn't matter." And I don't know if that's any different. I remember in college, like it was really hard, to take those finals, before you went because you just wanted to break, right? You just wanted to break. Right. And now with with COVID and I don't know, are the students aware at all? It's different where I taught.
As you know, with my class, I mean, just to give a little bit of background, Dave, and for those of you who are out there, we had barriers for each student. They were plastic barriers that you could affix to the table, which are really good because it gives you some degree of protection. And we first got them. I know I was the first one to put those in. I put them in immediately. And, I guess the kids weren't seeing them the first day in other classrooms. So it was kind of weird for them. But they didn't seem to be too careful about the whole thing. You get around 80% of students wearing the masks, and then maybe 20% not wearing it correctly. Maybe it's even higher. Maybe it's 30% not wearing it correctly, and then a few staff, obviously. So, to answer your question, I have to keep reminding them of it because for so long, Dave, I would say for at least a year and a half, they've been under the impression that young people are unaffected, and a lot of people say, that mostly young kids are worried about the moment and not necessarily COVID. Some are, but in general, I don't think there's as much care. But a lot of them are being put out of school for COVID. A lot of them testing positive. The only thing now, I tell them, I don't care what happens in the school. In this classroom, you're wearing the masks. I even told them on Friday or Thursday, Dave, that in Ontario they were saying that cloth masks aren't that good and it's passing through. So I can only take control of what's in the room. They do respect me. Of course, it's non-negotiable, but I don't know, Dave. It's I guess I don't ask them too much about it. I think if I didn't require them to wear it perfectly, they wouldn't. And that's
you hit a couple of things there about when we're young. Well, young, you're invincible. You're going to live forever. It's not real, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Veg, I have a kind of sad story. I'm going to save it for a little bit. The
Is
short
there a
answer
breakup?
is, we'll just save it for a little bit later in the show because it'll be tempting. For people tonight's the night. They might want to go party or something, and I don't want to give them an excuse to do that. So we'll save a couple things for later. But back to kids and things. I was saying to Brian, we talked for all of 2 minutes before the show. friend of mine, really, really good friend, who we're actually be doing a podcast together starting in January, as a teacher in Florida. And she has 2 children and her husband. And about a year into, well, when they went back to school, so, they were out in March, they went back and she got it, her whole family got it, but they're not real sure, like all of us, they're not real sure who got it first, because her son was playing hockey and her husband was required to go into work 2 days a week, and she was in the classroom. And now just this break that they had, she wanted to get tested, as she would see what she could do over the holidays, and she tested positive again. She has no symptoms, which is good. But, she wasn't a very happy camper, as you can imagine, because she said, here are all these assholes in Florida and everywhere not doing anything right. Mm-hmm. And, they seem to be skating through, but we don't know that. Okay, we don't know that. What I do know from, what would I say? Certainly not scientific data, but from observation and talking to people, tremendous number of people who haven't had it so far are getting this. Now, so, what exactly does that mean? Well, they tell us, and I accept it for a fact, that this is more transmittable, but as has often been the case with the virus, it drops down. But people have to remember that it still fills hospitals. And Brian, I'm not really great with math. I leave that to people like yourself. But it stands to reason if 10 people, if 10 people get something and the average is 1 of 10 gets really sick, okay. But if 100 people get it, even if only half a person gets sick, you're still going to have more. And that's really the concern right now with the hospitals. Is not the individual. And I noticed, the first comments here are the N95s. And I will just say what I heard this week from somebody I believe, and, I try to, what should I say? I hate to, she knows her shit. I'll just put it this way. She's been in the health industry for, God, how many years? Almost 35, maybe. And she sent a message to me. She just come from a couple meetings. She's retired now. And she said, just tell everybody to get the N95s. So kind of what you were saying, it's but for a lot of people, first of all, we have people who won't mask at all, right?
Right.
Then we have people who they make up their damn mind. And then we have people that look at it and say, well, wait a minute, I'm not going to spend all this money. And you look into it, they're really not that expensive.
No, they're not.
They're just safer. Now, if the difference is they to really be effective, I understand, you only wear them once, right?
Well, that's not the case for most people, though. That's the only thing.
And that's what I'm saying. So either, or they look at it and say, wait a minute, I paid $4 for this cloth mask and I can wash it once a month, and they think they're safe. Well, you know what? I'm going to ask you a question, Brian, and then we'll get into the normal flow of the show. But it just came up now. It's hard to look back in retrospect because, you learn new things and you know more. But at this time last year, are we kind of where you thought we might be in terms? Let's just talk about COVID for a moment, and then we'll move into the political scene. But did you think we'd be better, worse? Did you not know? What were your thoughts this time last year?
You're specifically talking about COVID, right?
I'm right now just talking about COVID, yes.
All right. If you're talking specifically about COVID, I honestly didn't know, to be frank with you, because this thing was just dragging out. I did know that, at least we knew that if Biden were to become president, things would be done that would be better than what was done with Trump. So there was a certain sense that when Biden came in, we would take care of business. But as you've said many times, we don't know what's going to be happening with this virus as the variants. We may have to live with this for a long time. So that was always out there in my mind. I just knew that there was a sense of optimism when Biden took office, because I knew that we wouldn't have the same bullshit that we got from Trump and, to some extent, Deborah Birx. I think that, I don't know that I had a viewpoint. I didn't think I was looking this far ahead, to what would be happening now, to be frank with you. But I generally thought it was going to be better under Biden. I
Now, do
did.
you still now?
Good.
No, I'm saying my question again would be this: do you feel not? I mean, we've established. I think, and if not, if anybody out there doesn't know how I feel, I'll make it real quickly. Every day, in every way, every American and every person in the world is better off with Joe Biden in the White House than Donald Trump. End of story. No discussion.
Right.
However, better doesn't mean even good, right? I mean, so there's that. I'm saying he's not good. I'm just saying
Right,
better.
right.
That's like being, that's like you're better than the worst human walking around, and Donald Trump may qualify for that designation. But did you expect us to be further along? Biden again, talking only about the pandemic, COVID, right
Oh, as
now.
far as with Biden, again, I
Now you're not looking back. Now you're looking right now. In other words, have you been relatively satisfied with what he's done, or do you
right.
think he could have
Dave,
done more?
My opinion is, and I'd like to ask you this after
Okay.
I finish. My
Sure.
opinion is he's done everything that he pretty much can do. He has done. I mean, the vaccines were available at some point. They were all available, and even the booster. So he's done everything that he possibly could do. His problem now, which will relate to some of the things that I've been worried about, would be this coup going across the country. This big lie. These governors, like DeSantis, like Greg Abbott, who don't even want people to wear masks, and they want to mandate that you don't wear the fucking mask. And it's the same with students. That's the problem. I didn't realize there was going to be such a lie out there that's being pushed. It's being pushed like it is in certain autocratic moving countries right now. It's sickening. It makes me sick. But again, I didn't think it was going to be this bad, that they were going to draw a line in the sand. They would say, okay, we're just going to keep pushing the lie. So it's not just Trump we have to worry about; it's the others. But again, I never would have thought that they would have gone this far. It's not Biden's fault whatsoever. He's done everything he could do.
And you said you wanted to ask me something. Was that the same return?
Well, I mean,
question, or
yeah,
what?
I mean, basically, I want to know what you think. Do you agree with me?
Yeah, well,
where were you on this?
Yeah, I think like every one of us, first of all, we'd like it to end, and it's not. Okay, it's not. That's you could put it number one on your Santa list, and Santa ain't bringing the end of the pandemic this year, and it's already come and gone, so that's not going to happen. So that's first. So I think too, as many of us, I feel we kind of get tantalized into thinking sometimes, not by anybody's fault, right? But I mentioned before, I did have 1 week where I didn't have to wear a mask. And we all felt, believe it or not, on a cruise ship, which sounds weird, but that we were all safe. We all were. Nobody on that cruise ship came down with anything within the time we were there or later. I mean, we've had plenty of time to judge that. And yet you see this week, third cruise ship came down with quite a few cases. So
Weren't
again,
you lucky that you got out of there just?
well, I think, but see, what we don't know, Brian, and this is why, I'm not just this old newsman saying this, we don't know the conditions. The only conditions I know of a cruise, and if Paul were on tonight, your friend and my friend Paul, we start arguing because Paul thinks it's horrendous to go on cruises, and that's fine. That's fine.
Well, I think he's
But,
more concerned about the Bahamas because he grew, and I understand that. I actually agree with him.
no, and
They're fucking up the
I
Bahamas,
do
and I
too,
don't think you
but
can
I think
disagree with
I mean,
that.
I think there's other reasons to. But anyway, having said that, we're not arguing that. But what's this? I can only speak to that one cruise, and they did everything right. And the reason I want to comment on that, it was just like you saying about Biden, right? I think this cruise, particularly this, now they had a little bit more of a vested interest in it because it was the first themed cruise to go out. So everybody, for those who don't know what a themed cruise is, as part of my writing practice, I go out and write about music cruises, musicians and music on the cruises. And that's one, but you have all kinds, I mean, you name it, there's a theme cruise for it. But this was the first one of all of them, so everybody's kind of honing in on that. My point is, number one, it was safe, but in that 1 week, Brian, I really got spoiled, It was like, and then you come back, and it's not that way, right? I mean, it's not. You can't do it. And then you go, what was it? When we went to New York, a couple weeks ago, just for an overnight stay, so you could play. and come back. And the play that my wife and Jack went to, that was postponed because somebody in the cast had COVID. The restaurant that we went to last night for Christmas Eve, we have two. If it's just Judy and I, we have two traditions here, two different restaurants we go to. And the one last night, we couldn't make reservations until yesterday because it had been closed because one of their employees got COVID. Today we go to the place where we go on Christmas Eve, Christmas Day. Very few places open, but it's a great one, and they have great food. And one of my favorite people there, who's the overall manager, I hadn't seen him. I said, Boley, where you been? He came down with COVID. And the point is, how do I feel about it? You just do the best you can. You know what I mean? I don't think, I never thought, I underestimated it at first in January and February of 2020. And after that, I think I've tried to just say, okay, do what you're supposed to do. I think sometimes, I don't know, I wish the government sometimes when they issue things would know more than they do. I understand they're experimenting. Like, I still have to wonder, had they said initially, masks, right? But that wasn't their first pronouncement, remember? First pronouncement from Dr. Fauci, well, I don't think masks. And living here in Washington and having such a large contingent of Chinese and Japanese graduate students in our buildings here, that was a way of life. I just saw masks all the time. And I think, well, what, it's not, a virus isn't different in Asia than it is here. And then you pointed out, which of course should be everyone's concern. You have governors, whether it's, Abbott or DeSantis or, the other Republican crazy governors who are.
They're not the only ones, but they're the ones, with
No. The red states. And what I find interesting, and here would be the challenge I'd like to ask them, okay? What is the difference between mandating a mask, right, which is safer, or mandating that you can't wear a mask even if you want to? There is no difference.
Right.
There is no difference. It's perspective and it's political. So now, but unfortunately, too many Americans believe in authority figures to begin with. Whether it's my country right or wrong, or whether they follow leaders. And look, there's nobody, not one congresswoman, man, senator, president, cabinet member in Washington, D.C. has a completely clean slate. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen to any of us as human. And secondly, it certainly doesn't happen to them because there's just too many temptations for power, too many temptations for deals to be made. And I'm going to say corrupt, but just, things all of a sudden, this power goes on. So, I don't really listen. When I say I don't listen to all of them, I sort through it, try to make a decision. But, there are certain things that I'm going to do because I feel I am double vaccinated, I am boosted, and I will do that until proven that you shouldn't. And, we wear masks everywhere we go. We're talking about that the other day, too, here. We live in a very special area in terms of that. I would guess, Brian, from the beginning until today, 90% of the people, almost 100 in stores wear masks where we are. And now I don't want to say that's political, but we live in a very affluent area. We live in one of the most highly
educated. I think you could just say you're very educated. That's seems to be the key.
And we're very educated here, and also we don't let Republicans resign. No, we have very few Republicans here, right? So that all blends to that. But I know when I visit, my old stomping ground, your neighborhood, where you live, different story. Certainly when I've been to Florida once, twice during the pandemic. Certainly different story down there. It'd be interesting, now that my son and daughter-in-law and two grandchildren are back in the States, are up at Boston. We'll see them. Then they're headed back to Alabama. So we'll probably be down in Alabama, I don't know, March, if we can travel. I'm sure it's different down there. So, but I think the point, and now we're going to get back to the political part because it's all intertwined. I think the point is that it is intertwined, okay? How, and this is rhetorical, how do you make a disease political? But they figured out how to do it, right?
Well, they
which
do
is
that with climate change too.
Well, I realize that. Not just this, right? To me, that is a point that really is insane, okay? On any side to do that. You can debate the science, I suppose, if you want to, but you can't politically debate the science. Peer tested, review tested, science, and know that this is new and it's changing. So, Brian, we normally start, we did a little different thing tonight, but we'll get back to the normal start of the show now. You're our official, I always laugh, I don't say warrior, but, I think you pointed out a couple times, you do have a tendency to see things developing sometimes that are worrisome.
Yes, I'm pretty good at that. I think,
you really are. That's
Guy McPherson mentioned something like that to me because I told Guy that in the 1970s, because I loved hockey and I would go out, the month of January was like my month to go out and skate in the ponds. And you probably remember Sunset Lake freezing back in the day.
Oh, God.
But I noticed, each year generally less and less ice, shorter time periods where we would be skating on the ponds. And so Guy mentioned, he said, the people who usually picked up climate change first were the artistic people because they have a sense of expression. They see things that most people don't see, and they're aware. Now, maybe that's going too far. I don't know, but I kind of agree with him.
No,
you didn't have to have your degree. You didn't have to look at the climate models. You didn't have to look at the carbon dioxide or the methane levels. You just knew that this was not a one-time aberration. You knew that something was happening. And you're right. I've always felt that I've been in tune. It's like almost like a dog senses danger, or when you sense somebody,
or who else
you.
senses danger? Robots. Danger, Will Robinson. Danger. Warning. Danger,
Right.
Will Robinson.
and
that's kind of
I guess it's paranoia, Dave, in a certain sense that in some ways paranoia can help because there are times when things come your way, and that's what I guess saved human beings, thousands of years ago, because you're watching out for the lion. You have that adrenaline that flows. You had to constantly be like, almost like a squirrel, where a squirrel's always looking around. Right. I never see a very comfortable squirrel, and that's what I've become. It's right. I think I have radar to this, and now it seems like we all have it, right?
But by the way, I'm just responding to Gary and Anthony. Gary, Anthony is absolutely right. He's very close. It wasn't moose code. It was reindeer code. I was sending a message
pen
up
of
to the
yours
North
that
Pole
they're really reading your pen.
To the idea of what I was setting it up to is the idea of thanking Rudolph. So I'm going to talk about Rudolph later.
I don't know how Santa can survive because his ass must be through the ice right now. Because once it starts raining up there, that's it. When it rains in the winter, the ice is done.
It is strange today. I was just looking at weather's something that I've never. How can I explain this? Some people I think are weather obsessed. Some people, but to me, it's the weather is whatever it is. I have to deal with it, right? I'm not talking about climate change. I'm talking about weather. Right. But today I was looking at it, and they said what record highs across the country, and I'm thinking.
It was frightening here.
We walked
Christmas
today,
Day, and you could wear a T-shirt, perhaps.
Right. No, in Washington D.C., and I had on just a shirt and not even like a kind of a sweater vest, heavier kind of fleece thing, and I was actually sweating walking.
I believe.
I didn't. How do you do that? So I think so. Brian, I'm going to call you now. I got a new name for you. So my best friend, who's squirrel-like and is always looking around. What has you?
All right, that's fair enough.
From last
Dave.
week to this week, right?
Okay.
It could be.
So,
it doesn't mean it doesn't mean you can't look back. But what has you tonight? Some things that you has Yeah, but I speak well for being a podcaster and
No, we're
on the show.
okay as long as the critics don't
No,
go after us tonight.
no, I don't care about that. Laughingly, but what I'm saying here is, what has you most worried tonight?
Okay. Usually I'll cite one particular event, something that happened with Manchin or something like that, but not tonight. Because, actually 3 weeks ago, I believe it was 3 weeks ago, I mentioned I was reading Twilight of Democracy and Applebaum. And I haven't read too much of the last 3 weeks, but the last 2 days I have. And she was going into the political change in Poland after Lech Walesa, talked about Hungary, and basically shows that they went to a one-party system. And you had liberal elements in both countries, and they just shut it down. They gained control, and this should start sounding familiar. They gained control of the courts. They gained control of the media. They were using conspiracies. Hungary would throw out all this information about George Soros, and that starts sounding familiar again too. And as I'm reading this, you see the blueprint, and again, it's not so much any one specific event, Dave. It's this feel as I'm reading this is what's happening. And then meanwhile, I'm watching these interviews from Holocaust survivors, where one of these guys, his name was Emmanuel Middleman. You can find it on YouTube. He was interviewed by USC back in the 1990s, early 90s. And he was talking about when he was in Slovakia, around 39, 40. And, word was going around that the Germans were coming in, the Nazis were coming. And so many people were still saying, no, this isn't going to happen. This isn't going to happen. And then one, evening at 2:00 in the morning, there were a couple flashlights on his face, and he realized that his whole world had changed. And the next minute, he's in, not Buchenwald, but was it Birkenau? Birkenau, yeah. He went to Birkenau and Auschwitz and things like that. And it's the idea that, you look at these people's experiences and you say, this can happen. This can happen. I'm not saying Auschwitz is going to happen, but this idea of a one-party system, and that's what I fear about. So this reading has got me very, very nervous, and I'm actually glad that I've read this, because I know some of the folks here probably read this themselves, but there is a seductive lure, as she says, to authoritarianism, and they do buy the conspiracy theories. We do see what's happened in Poland. There's essentially, one party there. We do see that it's happened in Hungary, and I haven't gotten to the part with the United States, but we can expect that it's probably going to be something like that. So my fears have come to fruition, and I'm the same feeling that I got that the weather, the climate was changing when just by not being able to skate on those ponds during certain times during January. I have the same feeling when I read this, and then I look back. I recollect on the last 2 or 3 years, actually the last 4 or 5 years, and I see no good. And this is where it gets me so angry at people like Garland, because at some point you have to do something, because it will get that bad. So that's what's got me upset. What do you think?
Can't argue with you.
Remember, Dave, you were the one who did say they're trying to kill us, and you weren't joking.
I'm not joking about that. I'm not. I think, but there's a lot of these comparisons to what happened, in Nazi Germany, and everybody jumps immediately. I shouldn't say everyone. Let me rephrase that. That's a poor choice of words. Many people jump immediately to the camps, right? Germany would have been pretty bad without the camps, okay? That was a byproduct of, the idea of doing that. I do think if someone like Trump or a figure like that were to get more control than they had last time, given what's happened with the Supreme Court, given the fact that now we know that there are very few people, maybe 10 Republicans in the whole House who will stand up to anything, Republicans, that it could be easy. I mean, I would certainly be worried if I were a distinct minority, not necessarily African Americans, although I would worry if I were African American. More so if I was Muslim, or from an Arabic country, and not established. I could see some things happening there. But basically, I mean, I don't think if I were a betting man, and I'm not, I would not bet on. And I was thinking of this today, Brian. I was thinking about where we are. I think many people, I'm one, I shouldn't say many, I know I do, kind of get reflective between now and New Year's. It's the idea of one year wrapping up and a new year coming, and you look back, and there's some nostalgia involved, but there's also some genuine introspection and reflection. And I can say this with absolute certainty. January 6th and the reaction after January 6th, if there was any doubt in my mind that Sinclair Lewis's satiric title, "It Can't Happen Here," was actual fact that it can't happen here, was gone. Now, sometimes we joke with each other and that I'm the optimist. So I'll kind of turn this around. What do I find optimistic this week? Well, first of all, it's with a caveat. Of course, you have to caveat it. But what's making me feel a little bit better is my piranha theory, which is evil is a destructive force. I think it always has been, and it always will be. The question, of course, the tragedy is that evil can exact a tremendous toll in terms of lives and livelihoods, and before it's extinguished, right? So I believe that what we're seeing now from the Trump-Publican wing of the party, no, from the Republican Party, you can say that now. There's no good ones left in terms of there is evil. All right, so you say, well, Dave, wait a minute. Well, slow down here. You're supposed to be saying what makes you feel good, and it's this. This week we saw some more eating away, and piranha. If they don't get fed, they start eating each other, and we saw a little bit of that. I don't know, Brian, if you were looking, Donald Trump did to me. I don't think he could amaze me anymore. He speaks both on the Candace Owen interview and at a rally, and he speaks and mentions that he was received the booster. Now, the moment Trump said "don't get it," to me, if I were following, I wouldn't follow, but the moment he said, once I found out that he got the first shot, I would say, well, you con man, liar. If you get it, it's good. But some people didn't. But this seems to have pushed some of the people over the edge, right? And they booed it. Now, of course, it's in the moment. But Mr. Papa Bear Bill O'Reilly, he was on this failure of a tour, that also warmed my heart. 17,000 capacity in Houston, and I believe the crowd was under 7,000. So that's a positive, I suppose. Bill said he had to really bolster up his boy Donald, because Donald felt really bad about getting booed. Now, so I have to wonder, why did he do that? He had to know that he was going to get booed, or did he think? But did he think that whatever he said
he wasn't going to
didn't matter
because he is who he is?
Well, I'm saying. So was it just? And then, he kind of, if you're on the side of evil, he kind of put his foot in further. He said, he comes up and says, "Well, wait a minute, don't boo it. Don't boo. Look, this is something we accomplished, and they're trying to take it away from us." So that's his narcissism coming to the forefront, right? And I thought one of the most interesting things was after the fact. Joe Biden this week did give, and Trump deserves that. I mean, he was president when they got the vaccine started. I mean, not administered, but was working on it. And he kind of said, well, Donald Trump got that. No special effort maybe, but just got it. And I love Trump's comment later. Says, it's going to be awfully hard to attack President Biden now. He said nice things about me. So does that mean, suddenly we'll see an alliance? But all that's kind of not going to happen. What is going to happen, any rift in that right-wing cabal of crazy is a good thing, because they all have The belief is that Trump is this savior, right? And I think that's true. But under that, there's all these other factions.
There are
There's
agendas
Alex,
out there. Each
there are
one.
well, there's an Alex Jones, and I'm not talking about Ted Cruz or DeSantis. I'm talking about the non-political, supposedly non-political. You're right. They all have their agendas. But you've got the Linwood. You've got your favorite ex-general Michael Flynn.
Oh.
You've got Candace Owen, who I loved her defense of Trump. Now think about this. Think about the logic or lack of saying behind this. She gets attacked because she was the one who some people felt she didn't strongly come after the president after he talked about being vaccinated in the interview. And Candace comes back and says, well, just let it go. He's old. He doesn't know what he's saying. He's part of them. He's old. He doesn't know what he's saying. He's part of them. Is that a real endorsement for your leader? So, I like the fact that they're infighting. Also, another thing, I wish it were faster, like you. I certainly think that I would do things. I would have. Well, you can't say it. Yeah, I'm going to say it anyway. Just God damn it. If I were Merrick Garland, I'd have somebody fully charged,
Right.
for something. Even if I lost it, I don't care.
It's a
I don't have to win them
no-brainer
all.
to me. I don't know what he's waiting for with some of these people.
Having said
Michael
that,
Flynn, number one.
we're seeing an incremental steps in Congress as we go with the January 6th committee, right? They're now forcing some people to make decisions. Jim Jordan, other Congress people that they haven't, and that's what. So we've moved from people that were in Trump's orbit, right? Roger Stone, Steve Bannon, those kinds of people, Mark Meadows, who the hell knows what he's doing. But the idea now we're actually into congressmen, and they're going to have to make a decision. Now, unfortunately, there's really not a lot of oomph that Congress could do. This would be very effective if the American people were open-minded, but they're not. Okay, they're not. There's there's two groups that aren't. One is they're already, the Republicans can do no wrong. That's one group. But the group that bothers me more, and I don't have a plan for them, not that I would be the one to come up with a plan, but is the ones that don't see this as important. You said it, you always said, and you're right, this isn't a time for fence sitting. There is no fence. You're on one side of the damn other.
Me,
And, I was doing some reading this week about the establishment of unions and looking to see how that kind of, was the same, because we're seeing that back again now. There's a real interesting story in Washington. It only interests us in Washington, not anyone else, but it is reflective of what's going on. There's a bookstore here called Politics and Prose. It is my favorite bookstore in the world. And they're very liberal leaning, right? Two former Washington Post editors. In fact, the wife was the press secretary for Hillary Clinton when she was the vice president for a while. And, but their workers, I think, I might be off of this, but I think there's like 70 people that work there because, it's well-staffed, and they have actually, 3 satellite bookstores in their main bookstore here in D.C. And the workers wanted to unionize. And initially, the owners, liberals though they are, were opposed to it. And their point, which may have some validity, was they feared that if you unionized, it wouldn't have that same camaraderie feel. That's bullshit. Okay, I'm sorry. It is bullshit. They were using the same thing that Jeff Bezos does and all that. So what happened was some of the longtime fans of the store, a small group, went out and picketed the store. And the workers continued talking to the union. And now the owners have indicated that they are willing to sit down and talk, right? So that's another thing. You say, well, why is that? Because what I'm seeing, Brian, is this group who might fall into that, I don't care about politics, some of them are going to get sucked in through they're just seeing their jobs are shitty. They really are. you're the economic expert on this team, but how the hell? I mean, I don't have an answer. $15. Well, that's a big jump from 7. It doesn't get you anywhere near a living wage here.
Right.
No, I mean, not even close. Because of all these other incurred costs that other nations don't have, whether it be education, whether it be healthcare, whether it be transportation, right? Anti-Gaia, I know, I got you, okay? But I remember, I'm an East Coast kid, okay? I like PALS too, and I also like, I'm not completely East Coast, I also like, if you want to get to all of them, PALS is right up there with the Strand in New York, and you've also got City Lights in San Francisco. So, but if I have to pick one, I'm going with the 2 East Coast things.
Dave,
East
I
Coast
thought
boy.
your favorite bookstore was the Red Barn on 322.
No, that's well, I have visited, I guess, a couple of those. over the
Only
years.
people from New
But you know
Jersey
what?
would know what we're talking about.
Yeah, no, well, yeah, well, that's true.
But people tend to stay there quite a while for some strange reason.
Yeah, well, and you always have to wonder about a place that has a secret entrance in the back.
Yes,
and a parking
why do
lot
they have a
behind.
secret entrance to a bookstore?
Yeah, but back to
I never see anybody come out with books.
well, they do, I guess. I don't know. Okay. Anyway, well, there would be an interesting study. Put that comment back up, the one about the PALS. So I really like that.
Let's do that.
I'm going to take off on that for a moment.
Let me favorite that.
Anti-Gaia got a great, you could do something great for the country. I don't have time to do it. And I'm not being, what do you think, Brian? And we're just going to speculate, because remember, we can do this. We're just talking heads. But I want Anti-Gaia, because I think, obviously, someone who knows, someone who knows and defends PALS and knows what's going on in the world. And then you mentioned the Red Barn. It would be interesting to know.
By the way, for those of you who are
Percentage?
out there, I don't frequent that store, nor does Dave.
Well,
but
well,
it's an
wait a
adult
minute.
bookstore.
You knew about it.
I certainly
thought,
did.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the Red Barn Deli.
Who
which
the
is a
hell
place
calls
also.
their bookstore the Red Barn and people come in the back door?
Well, anyway, the Red Barn in Vineland, New Jersey.
Red Barn.
Back to what I want Anti-Gaia or somebody on this program to do, because we have a lot of intelligent, smart people. It would be interesting to know, hypocrisy is a fascinating thing, and it's certainly, there are left-wingers, and I mean, all of us fall victim sometimes to showing or demonstrating hypocrisy, but I think they've become masters at it. It'd be interesting to know how many of them, watch porn and what kind of porn they watch. Just simply because, again, not because I like to get Kim upset, because, she's always hollering at me. But the other thing is, though, seriously, about that, it would be, does that show any patterns? Because I'm still trying to figure out, these, how did they get that way? I mean, we can talk about, I mean, originally, Brian, do you remember that, and again, every day in every way, now you're asking me, I'll tell you what I was optimistic about, something I'm troubled about. I'm really troubled about what I'm going to call the mainstream media.
I thought you were going to be all positive tonight, but now you've just done the U-turn.
Oh, no, I told you what I'm positive about.
All right,
I'm
all
not
right.
positive. I'm saying I like to see riffs, the piranha eating each other.
Right.
After that, there's not much else to be positive
And that's
about.
the true way you're going to win, probably. But I don't know how you're going to have to
Well,
do something to really get them
I-
after each other.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, it is, the first thing, the first sign that I will be somewhat optimistic is when Trump is charged and found guilty of a crime that makes it impossible for him to run for president of the United States. We're not out of the woods, just like we weren't out of the woods when Biden defeated him.
Oh, Dave,
That
Kim
would
has
be-
a message for you.
Come on, Kim. Look, I love you. Not if you're gonna holler at me. the idea is, now I'm losing my thought. I'm old anyway. But you're saying not being that optimistic. I mean, we're not. But I do think the first step, is eliminating Donald Trump, because that, to me, then leads to more infighting, right, from them. So all infighting from them is good. Second thing, I mentioned this group. Those of us who are smarter I do that all the time. Johnny Carson, man. Did you ever watch Carson?
Yes, he
Carson
did do that. You're right. He did do
Yeah,
that.
I'm like Johnny Carson, man. You know, I'm retro, man. I'm retro. You know, I don't even know when I honestly don't even know what I'm doing. It's a terrible habit, especially if you're on the air. I wonder if I don't know. Anyway.
No, it
Okay,
only
where
adds
were we
to
here?
the
Oh, I
image.
know where we were. We were talking about that middle, the thing has been named various things, the silent majority. I'm going to talk about the non-political, non-voting group. Third of America, Brian, what do you think? Maybe.
Yeah, well, we were mentioning this last week. We still don't even know who they are. I mean,
Well,
there are
that's
a lot
what I'm
of
saying.
different
So
what or what.
So
I don't know.
So that's the question. That's the battle. I mean, there's two battlegrounds. I've said it before, and certainly anybody's entitled to disagree with me. And if they do, I hope they can prove me wrong because I don't like to be wrong. But I think the two battlegrounds are suburbia, because urban areas are Democrat, rural areas are Republican in general. And the concern that I have with the suburban areas, this education issue they have. We're not going to spend a lot of time on that tonight. I think next maybe.
Dave doesn't blush, Kim. Believe me.
Oh, I do. For Kim, I would. Kim, if anybody could make me blush, I think you could. I really do. Because I like how you don't let me get away with things. So I kind of like that. Yeah. But Brian, back to this idea that this middle ground. So the suburban issue is slipping away
Climate change
from the
in this
Democrats.
room. Jesus Christ.
The other, so that makes that non-voting, area important for us to get. But first, you're right, Brian. How do you how do you identify them? How do you get them motivated? If they're not motivated now, the sides are entrenched. Could you imagine? And I really can't. Can you imagine anybody now who doesn't support Trump? I mean, who hates him, or just says he's a bad president and he loves him, turning and voting for him or Republican? I can't. Can you see anybody who is for him now voting for somebody on the other side? I can't. So where are we going to get the more votes from? It's going to be, thank you, Kim.
Now, just know that was positive. Now we got a negative.
Your tapping is extremely loud. Who, mine? What do you mean, Gary? What do you mean, Gary? All right.
You should have seen him when
pen.
Stormy Daniels was sitting on him.
I threw my pen away just for you, Gary. We go back a
He had
long
blood
way, so
coming out of his ears.
I will listen to your things. Now let's see what Suzanne Darlene Gregg Alsaf, her full name. So let's see what Darlene has here. Repukes now have total control of 30.
Yeah, and that's the big problem. That's what you and I have discussed in the past.
Well,
privately
yeah,
with
that
the-
is. I
the
mean,
states.
think about this, Brian. And I lose sight of this too sometimes. We get captured or captivated into the big races, right? The presidential, and because the presidential does influence the Supreme Court. But really, the real power is down in the states, right? Because they're the ones that are going to set the voting rules for the federal election, because we don't have. We should probably, honestly, I think we should have a federal election.
And this is where you need Merrick Garland to get on the move here, because the time is running short. Just like these cases, these court cases with Trump, how he runs the clock. It's just
and that's
just
I'm
that
just thinking now,
technique
Brian,
gets him out of, because he'll get in office again, he'll pardon himself, and that's it.
Well, here's the thing. Then what would? Because time. I mean, So let's say there is an option that actually the Justice Department could charge any state with violation of civil rights offenses, and certainly depriving voters of their right to vote if it can be proven more harmful to a group. Is a way they could go. But it takes a long time to get that through. And, once an election is held, Bri, there's no going back, right? I mean,
Plus, you have the Supreme Court, as somebody mentioned.
we don't, and we need to get issues. We need to get issues in front of the Supreme Court. The one that is
as if the Supreme Court.
We're
will do
going
it.
to abortion. If I
You're going to assume that they'll do the dirty with abortion. But as far as the rest of them, you're thinking somehow they'll be sensible. I don't believe so.
No, I don't. I don't.
Right.
No. What I'm saying is this. No, I don't even think they'll do the right. I think they may do better for the good guys in abortion than we know. We don't know, but I think the one that really, the one that bothers me is this. Trump now is asked to have his case heard at the Supreme Court level, right?
Which is ridiculous. But if it is heard, then
It's
or if they wait, they simply wait.
Well, yeah.
Let's just think about it for 3 years. He's got what he wants.
Well, you said it, and not that, when I say you said it, I don't mean others haven't, but you said it very early on. You were concerned because it seems Trump never loses. And it certainly does appear that way.
Right.
The only thing that I can counter with, and it not much, but it's all I can counter with, is he's always dealt with civil issues that can be bought out, you can run the clock out on them. You can settle, there's all kinds of ways that happens. With criminal, you can't do it necessarily. You're not going to be able to. But it doesn't matter if they don't get a charge on him, because that's going to be appealed. If it can be, right? If it can be appealed, and basically, that means anything Trump's found guilty of, he'll appeal it, and then we'll go back into this terrible process. Something else I've been following this week, so again, along those lines of division of power, and I think if we have a theme tonight, it seems to be, COVID, political division, crazy people on the one side. It's just, it's consistent. Is your favorite Congresswoman from Georgia, the one that you dream about pretty much nightly, Marcia Taylor Greene. And did you see, what's today? What is it? So today is Saturday? I think it was Friday, maybe Thursday. She is one, I don't know if you knew this, she is one of the world leading experts on everything. She is. I mean, it's clear. People believe her, and so she is. And
that's
she
all
made
they
two
need.
pronouncements.
That's all she needs to have, quite frankly, in the world of politics.
Well, she said,
the universe doesn't care.
He said variants. She said about variants. They're hardly infecting anybody anymore. And I've told you all along that vaccines are unnecessary. Now, I thought, okay, let's just check that out. Currently, there are 60,000 people, and remember, these are estimates because we don't really have good statistics. That's something else someday I hope we get better at. But approximately 60,000 people hospitalized in America tonight for COVID and COVID only, right? Well, maybe that's hardly any, but I don't think quite qualifies in my way of hardly any. And we're still averaging about 1,200 deaths a day. So, Ms. Taylor Greene did go on to kind of say why she felt it was so bad. Now it's where it really gets scary. First, she said, these businesses, because of Democrats, are firing unvaccinated people, which is against their rights. No, the court has upheld, right? I mean, the court has said in certain cases so far, they haven't said you don't have a right to do that. Right?
You're actually right, Veg, that something like that, it's kind of like these fights with Jake Paul. I mean, there are more people that put bets on those kind of fights than the regular fights.
Thank you, Veg and Brian, if you led me into my final remarks today, that's exactly where I'm going. But this idea here, she says, crippling business is because of vaccine mandates. Now, I will say this, I've seen very few businesses that do not have a help wanted sign up. Now, I haven't been to law offices, so I don't know how I think they're probably doing okay, or, those type of things. But I don't think it's a vaccine mandate. I think it's kind of the reverse. I think a lot of people aren't going to risk their lives, for $7, $15 an hour. It's because, and look what happens. Somebody I don't know if this is true. If we got any California people, please chime in. Somebody told me, and this is, so I would never, but it doesn't sound quite right, but there's a Burger King in the San Diego area that's paying $21 an hour.
Yeah, well.
I mean, I know there's some that pay,
the manager has to come in and do the work if he or she
well,
is willing.
But yeah, so
middle management, you're screwed because you're going to be, you're not going to be working by the hour. You're going to be, have a salary, and then you're going to come in and you're going to work 18 hours a day, and you're screwed.
And as I think again on another good point, which I touched on now, but now we're talking about, I think you're beginning to see, to try to squash it, but you're beginning to see workers for the first time probably in 10 or maybe more years beginning to stand up. Look at Kellogg's, right? They held out. They got a contract that was acceptable. You've got
maybe
Amazon.
COVID's going to help in a lot of ways. Maybe we need COVID.
Well.
I mean, seriously, I know it sounds absurd, but maybe that's what saved us from Trump.
I do think, I mean, I'm the first one to say, well, you can't second guess, it is, no. I would feel pretty safe in saying if COVID hadn't come along, Donald Trump would have gotten a second term.
Right. And COVID killed a lot more Republicans than that lunatic who went to the softball practice.
That's true. But here's the point I wanted to make, Brian, about Miss Taylor Greene. And this is why she and these people are so deadly. Because most of the people that she's talking to really don't have a firm grasp on politics. Now, again,
and they won't need to, given their constituents.
I do have one statistic on that, and I think it's probably outdated, but outdated not because it's higher; it's probably lower. So years I was working at the museum and doing the guided tours there. Their thing on the First Amendment, and they did a national poll, and it came in that 1 out of 20 people polled could name the 5 freedoms in the First Amendment. Now, not everything you need to know there, but they are the people's amendments. If you don't know those, you don't know your rights. Right? But here's the converse of that, which is the more frightening. Yet 80% of those people polled, not the same people, but people, some the same, some not, were able to identify all 5 of the Simpsons.
Right.
There you are. There's your pop culture theory. You're always on that. Yes. So you've got.
Who do you think is a more known and household name, Thomas Jefferson or Stormy Daniels?
I do think they're Thomas Jefferson. It pains me to say that now. I think now if you're saying who would lead to more,
an 18-year-old Republican kid who
I think now if you want to go with Chester Garfield or James Buchanan or Franklin Pierce or even President McKinley, you know what I mean? People like that, or heaven help us if they want to know about John Calhoun or Henry Clay.
Was it Cleveland who they couldn't get out of a bathtub or something? I forget who it was.
That's a false. He was a big boy though. He
was a big boy. He was like Butterbean or something.
Well, you know what though?
Butterbean of the 19th century.
Or Haystacks Calhoun. That was
yes, if you're old enough, folks, you'll know who Haystacks was.
Yeah, Haystacks was. Anyway.
You get a nice pair of overalls.
Always wore the same pair.
Yeah. The other, one of you wearing those.
You always wore the same. What happens is, though, we're kind of joking about this, the way pop culture influence things. I bet you a hell of a lot of people know who Alexander Hamilton is, who didn't know it before the play Hamilton. Right?
I bet you Aaron Burr knew who he was.
But true, in his time. So my point, getting back to Ms. Greene here for a moment, is we've got people who really don't know, and this is the thing that really is deadly for America. Yeah, the vaccines, all that's deadly. But here this is how she says, The current government carrying out deception is, and I quote, pure communism. Huh?
Yeah, that seems to be their line.
Huh?
It works, Dave. It's like the Democrats are going to raise your taxes.
I know it works, Brian. That's the point. Don't somehow, and I don't know how, people have to, they believe what they want to believe, okay? But if you want to, it's not communism, it's not socialism. But what Donald Trump is proposed, or what he would gear, or what he wants, is authoritarianism. And where the Republican Party is headed is fascist government. That's the truth. Big Daddy. So.
That's not necessarily a good thing. Are you talking about Haystacks Calhoun or Alexander Hamilton, Veg? Because one of them makes it pretty scary. Because I do think that Veg, I mean, I love Canada, but, the WWE is really big up there,
It should be big everywhere. It's sports entertainment.
I don't think you see Veg going to them.
No, well, you know who's well.
I don't think he's done any video in the WWE.
How many other presidents have actually performed for the WWE other than President 45?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of similarities between Vince McMahon, the president of WWE, and he is a billionaire. His wife was rich in her own right.
And was working within the Trump administration.
And yes, and she got
Small Business Administration.
But the similarities are interesting. I mean, they're both narcissists. They both live in fantasy world.
Yes.
And they both had fathers who they're trying to outdo. Because it was Vince Sr., who actually started kind of the modern professional wrestling. And he had kind of morals a little bit, some. And Vince, can't accuse him of that, nor Donald Trump. So you and I think it was Veg set me up very well here for the last thing that I have listed tonight that I want to talk about, and then maybe we'll go to some comments or some more things. I don't know if anybody is out there has watched. I watched it last night. Last night? Yeah, I guess last night. My wife is not speaking to me today because I made her watch it too. The movie Don't Look Up. It was just released Friday, right? Friday? Yeah. So yesterday. What do you know anything about it at all, Brian?
Nothing.
No. Okay, so basically, first of all, it is laden with stars of all types. I mean, you've got DiCaprio, you've got Jennifer Lawrence, you've got Ron Perlman, who I think is one of the great tweeters, great tweeters in America today, and the list just goes on and on, right? You actually have one of the leading actresses of all time, a female in there. I mean, you have so it's all these kinds of really interesting people. You look up the cast, and I was expecting good things from it, and my wife said, "Do you have any idea how bad that movie was?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "But what?"
Kim must have seen it.
Yeah, and Kim, I'm going with you. The question, I'll get to it in a moment, but the question is this: can a movie that pretends to be a comedy be too serious to be a comedy? So here's the point. There's not a moment in that movie, where you escape the idea this is a parody of what's happening now, but it's been said, and I tend to agree with it, that satire, when you deal with this Republican side of the world now, is dead. There's no satire. And Kim, you and I'll just hold a conversation. We'll drop Brian out of it, because he doesn't know what the hell he's doing anyway. But what happens in this movie, Brian, I don't want to give it away for everybody, but there's a surprise ending.
Give it away now.
Kate Blanchett is in there too, Meryl Streep. I mean, there's just this wonderful cast. But the basic storyline is this. a very kind of nerdy, retiring professor, an astronomer. He's been kind of bookish, and this punk rock graduate student. She discovers they discover this comet, right? And they track the trajectory, and it's coming straight at Earth, and it's a planet killer. It's going to take everybody to die, and the whole movie is how people react to that, and it's so in keeping with what we see now, right? Oh, the Van Eriks. See what a small world it is. You don't even know who the Von Erichs are.
I don't know who the Von Erichs are. Did they invent?
I know they were a huge wrestling family back in the day, the Von Erichs. Anyway, so you've got this thing, and so I mean, just sometimes the president, who's a female, does like the Donald Trump. Like, what do the numbers mean? What does this happen? There's a black gentleman who is the head of the NASA Planetary Destruction. They say the only chance we have is to blow it up, right? Well, then this character who plays like a combination Bezos and Elon Musk, and half new age, half techno geek, and he's like the third richest man in the world. Mm-hmm. He discovers that there's mining. There's I forget. Kim, tell me if I'm wrong. What was it? $132 trillion or something worth of minerals on this thing. So he says we can't. We need to blow it up, put it in the ocean, and then we'll mine it. And the bottom line is, of course, Tyler Perry plays like a Mike Strahan character, in the news, and Kate Blanchett plays a newswoman, and they're all jolly, like on the morning show. So my point is, in this movie, a lot of movies now that I watch, or a lot of TV shows, it's kind of hard. You see Trump, you see what's going on in all of them, right? This is the first movie, to my knowledge, a big budget movie that's been written right about this, but they kind of disguised it. Now, the only thing and I'd be interested, Kim, what you think. I think it's something that makes you think. I like the movie, but it's getting blasted on both sides. I mean, there's a lot of support for it. It's like everything else, critics, up and down. But some of the critics have compared it to Dr. Strangelove, and I don't think it's quite that good. But it comes at a different time, right? We didn't know at the time how real, because the Strangelove was based on Kissinger, and he wasn't really a power then. Later on, we saw that he wasn't, the generals, and we saw Vietnam play out, and we saw, they wanted to bomb Cuba, but we didn't. Now we know, that that's Trump, that's, Fox News, that's this. So, what'd you think, Karen? Let me know, because I'm just. We're not a movie critic show, but I think it would be important.
I'm way behind the times, Rich.
Yeah. So, it would be interesting because I thought, like I said, I think it's a movie everyone should see. Now, is it as enjoyable as West Side Story? No, I just saw that. They're the only two movies I've seen I didn't even see that. I saw West Side Story in the theater. Out there, but are we living? Are we living in such an age that satire is meaningless? In other words, you can't out-satirize what they're doing. And about the American values, the idea was one of my favorite scenes. Brian was Ariana Grande. Do you know who Ariana Grande is? I know you're not hip with the time. Yeah, she's sort of like a young Lady Gaga, you know what I mean? Or she's big.
I've heard the name.
Yeah, she's got a good voice, actually. But anyway, she does this benefit concert, and what happens, Brian, and this is why it's kind of interesting. The Republican side, they never say they're Republicans, but obviously they wear red hats, so it's right there. The motto is, you can finally see the comet in the sky, right? So you no longer can disprove that it's there. And you see it. And so the motto of the people who want to do something about it is look up, right? Just look up. Their motto is don't look up. So Ariana Grande, who had already, the character that she plays, had already usurped a lot of the value because she'd gone on this show and she was just, we were talking earlier about who would, Bo Burt and Marcia Taylor Greene having some kind of, death noon match or whatever. It was kind of that all the Twitterverse goes crazy over her. But she comes in at the end, she takes the other side, and they have a benefit concert, and she sings this thing that sounds like a song from Frozen. Just look up, and it's like, wow. They didn't leave too many stones. No, I don't say stones unturned, that's so cliched. But they didn't leave too many subjects to attack that weren't attacked. And Brian, what bothered me is there were so many of them. And that's the real world. That's America today. You know, it's almost like overwhelming. Where do you start? Where do you start? Okay. And part of that is they're so intertwined. But, you know, social media, lost cause. Like I said, I'm really getting down now on mass media, not understanding how to cover it. I've always been down, and my apologies. No, not my apologies. People are entitled to get the news any way they can as long as they get it. I've never gotten my news since ever from television, because to me it's a different medium. I think radio is if it's not a show like ours, not a talk show. If it's an actual news show, it's pretty good.
And by the way,
Best
Dave,
news source.
we did go over 100. We're at 100 right now, subscribers.
Oh,
thank
good.
you. And we were at 101. I don't know what happened. Maybe somebody bailed out. But thank
No,
you,
I think
thank you. And please share
probably-
this to your friends. That's all we ask.
will.
We don't ask for anything. Just share it, and maybe they'll subscribe.
Well, or you know, or maybe just hold a party for your 12 best friends who are liberals and tell them they can't go home until you see them sign up.
And we
for
may
it.
need each other as the Republicans take over.
Well,
we may be
you know what's
one of the
we're
few
sitting here-
places you can
we're
get
sitting here
info.
laughing about that, but you know that's not beyond the realm of
Right.
possibility, Brian, because certainly, well, let's jump on. Let's turn to Texas. They now have a vigilante system to report. You don't think that other states are going to start having that? They're reporting on abortions,
Oh, it happened
and
in
they
the
give
South,
a
that's for
bounty.
sure.
They give a bounty. Now, you don't think at some point it couldn't get to the, you know, it couldn't get, because remember, the first thing that, if you don't have absolute military power, which the right does not have right now,
Right now,
okay?
they got some Ford F-150s, some shotguns.
But the first thing then you have to do, and you do it simultaneously, and some people will argue it comes before the military coup, is you have to get a hold of control of the media. And the reason you have to get control of the media is you have to get a control of the message. And Anthony, you're absolutely right. You know, and yes, I understand that so are newspapers are owned by different things. And it's worse now than it ever was.
But that doesn't mean the
I-
independent journalist has to go along with, you know, they're
I'm sorry, Brian, I missed the first part. Say that
just
again.
saying that doesn't mean that the individual journalist has to give up their, you know,
That's,
I mean, you were a reporter.
Let me-
I'm
let
just
me- let me
saying
do it
there are
this
some
way,
people who
okay?
just have some pride
Brian.
in their work and they
Okay,
have
Brian.
a code.
Okay, I understand that. Teachers have a code too, though, right?
Some teachers, yes.
No, I mean, basically, you know, can you see if they said tomorrow in school, don't teach something that a lot of people wouldn't? Because they'd want their job.
Sure.
If they said teach a way you didn't want to, might you at least try it?
Well, that's where you have. It's just like when you speak, you have to use the language and twist it in a way that you can get around it. Not everybody can do that.
Well, I understand. My point is, Brian, yes.
You did that yourself.
The myth,
Dave.
but
you
now,
know
now we're
that.
talking about the myth. We're talking about the myth of the journalist, okay? So let's dispel that now with some anecdotal evidence. Ready? You know, like I said, this is a time to wax nostalgic. Three of us joined the newspaper business within a week of one another, okay? And we were pretty much representative of the types of people that join, okay? I just walked in and got the job. Still don't know how I got it, but I did. And, but I was the radical. I mean, I was, you know, I'd come off the protests and stuff. And I mean, that isn't why I got the job. I mean, I said, okay, well, maybe I can do some good in here, you know, doing this. Really, I just wanted a job because my wife, you know, we had kids and we had we had a kid and we had bills. But so I'm just saying that's one type. But if I had really picked a career, it was a place where I could kind of, and I liked the code that you could be honorable and be a journalist. The second one in, we're still friends today. He was I dreamed of being a journalist forever, had gone to, got his degree in journalism, was the editor of the college paper, worked in and came in. And I still remember when we all went out, the three of us went out to get our press cards, like you would have thought it was the greatest thing in the world. And he was a good newsman, really was. But he fell foul of a few things. We were pretty heavy into drugs and drinking in those days, and he got a really bad coke problem. And he he had a big time coke problem. So he had to fund it. So he ended up down to casinos, and he actually ended up as Donald Trump's spokesperson for his Atlantic City casinos until he was fired. But he had journalism integrity going in. And the third just wanted to be a great writer. And he subscribed to the idea, don't let the facts get in the way of a story. So I learned very early on that the myth of the journalist. And remember, at the time I got into it, you had the Watergate and Woodward and Bernstein. And what people forget about that is, do you know how many people in their office came to them initially and said, drop that shit? All the White House reporters came to him, Brian, and said, don't do that. You're going to take away our sources. So if you don't have, I guess in that business journalism, you're saying they should. If you don't have but I think it's kind of the same everywhere. If you don't kind of have a maverick streak, and I don't mean a maverick like Sarah Palin, maverick, whatever she was. Of course, she was a precursor to Marcia Taylor Greene and Boebert.
And apparently cinema.
What I'm saying is, I mean, I don't see much else out there that's really, going to protect us. I don't know if you saw the statistics.
No, everybody's waiting for everybody else.
Well, that's why I'm supporting kind of what you're saying. So there may be, remember.
Biden seems to think we're just going to vote.
I don't want to be the show where Dave said we're going to be like Nazi Germany next week, but let's assume we get into a fascist state. Let's just say that.
But what do they have to
fight it?
You said yourself, they have to take the media control, complete control.
They have right now. They have Fox. They have
Newsmax,
OAN. They have Newsmax. And if you could explain this to me, and I've asked people time and time again, and nobody's been able to do it to my satisfaction. Look at the number of liberal talk shows there are, just radio talk shows. Very limited.
Right.
Look at the number of right-wing talk shows there are, quite a few. Look at the number of batshit crazy talk shows there are, quite a few. Why is that? And nobody's answered that to my satisfaction. Is it that intellectual liberals don't listen to radio? I don't think so. They listen to PBS. I don't know what that is. Is that the idea? It's not, it's not sexy enough. It's not controversial enough. I don't know. So the media, and then I'm saying it's really tough though, Brian, and I want to drive this home for everybody out there tonight. This is as preachy as I'm going to get. In journalism, there never has been, never will be objectivity. Human beings cannot be objective, okay? We all have feelings, subjective. We have themes running through us, all this type of thing. But what was the idea of objectivity? If somebody said A, and their opponent said B, you ran them side by side. You didn't run one without the other, right? But that's true. I was thinking about that this week, Brian. So I want your thoughts on this. I think part of the problem is the old Republican Party. I'm going to kind of say they were military hawks, right? They believed in trickle down, okay? They did not want to have social spending. They would spend on the other side. They're all things that you can actually bargain out, right? You say, okay, we'll increase military spending a little bit, but you increase the they're not. Now, we're talking about moral issues. We're talking about abortion. We're talking about voting, right? I mean, we were talking about how do you feel about people that are different than you? It's real hard. Where do you find? I mean, okay. How do you respond if somebody doesn't believe? No, let me do it this way. If somebody believes abortion is a sin, and they believe it is their job not only not to sin themselves, but not to encourage or allow sin, there's no room for movement on that.
Right.
They can't be they shouldn't be in politics. They should be in their church, but they are there now, right? So when you say, so get back to that. Okay, so the media, I agree, but the media is, we don't, so what, then we said the military, right? They have to control
Well,
the
yeah, I was
military.
going to add that the military has to be, at least
And I'm sorry.
half of it or whatever.
I'm sorry, I'm not, I don't, what should I say? I don't say that every survey that's ever been is wrong, but when the military just came out with, I think it was just the Army, it wasn't the whole military, saying that there were about 100 extremists in the military. Whoa, no. There's got to be
Maybe
more than
100 officers who are like that.
Not even that. Even that. I mean, certainly General Flynn.
Yes,
who
and his
should be
brother,
called-
I would include for sure. They just
They
haven't.
should be called they should be called the Benedict Arnold brothers.
Right.
But they're not the only two. So yeah, I mean, I don't, and they're top brass now. So I do think that I've said it all along, and until I'm disproved, I will go with this. The military is set up to follow the president, who is the commander in chief. However, as we see now, there were plans and have been plans used before, where if you thought the commander in chief was, shall we say, batshit crazy.
Joey
you
wants to
wouldn't
know
do
if
it.
you meant when you were talking about the Republicans then, were you talking about under Reagan or before that?
Oh, traditionally all the way through. For example, you think about it, you've probably seen it. Brian, I want to say that, what was it? The tax rate for Dwight Eisenhower for the rich was 90%.
Yeah, something
And-
like this, maybe even higher.
No, I think it was like 90%.
I mean, the marginal
And
rate
so we-
was a marginal rate.
So that's where we got that's where we got our interstate highways from. Yeah, kinky. I mean, I agree with you. I mean, I think that alone kind of shoots down 100 extremists. To me, a racist is pretty much an extremist. Well, no, let me phrase it. They have to act on that racism. I mean, so that doesn't mean to kill them. They just have to act on it. So Brian, so we look at that. What else do you think they would have to have a not just to have a
Courts.
coup, but to have they have the
Media.
the Supreme Court. So they have that court, right?
Right.
At least on paper.
They have to have a majority within the Congress.
Well,
majority with the Senate.
They do. They right now the Senate is 52-48 them.
What they
We have
don't
2 Ds.
have is a majority in terms of the voting public, but I don't think they give a shit about that because they'll never get that again.
Well, that's part. Why do you think, Brian? I mean, how old am I, Kim? March 26th, and I expect you to celebrate that date. I will be 70 years old. I'm 69 currently. And right, 70 comes after 69, yes. Then the next thing you've got, Brian, how old? So I'm 69, Kim, tonight, 70 March.
That's
26th.
funny, Dave, because I remember Judy said you were 12 the last time I spoke.
Well, I said she goes by emotional age, and she's probably damn close. Although I think it's a little insult. I think I'm more 13 than 12. But who's going to quibble over a year? I have Peter Pan syndrome. I'm never going to grow up. So what we find though. You know what's interesting, Brian? Neither one of us has said. And I am too old. Yeah, I am too old for college debt. Again, here's the difference. Okay. I went to Villanova University. It was a private school, so it was more expensive than public school, obviously. And my senior year, there's a redundancy. My senior year, for the whole year, it cost me $7,500 to go to Villanova University. Graduated in '73. Today, it's over $70,000 a semester. So yeah, college debt's. When people say that, I smile because I'm thinking, okay, I didn't have college debt. I was upper middle class. My parents paid. My wife was an upper middle class. She was really came from a working class family. And so she had to help fund her college. She paid for her whole college by working at Owens, Illinois, a glass plant in the summer, and was able to pay almost her entire way. She went to what was then Trenton State College, now is Trenton. State College of New Jersey or College of New Jersey. So who is? I'm losing track here. I want to know who the oldest person is. Anthony, you claim you are. How old are you, Anthony? Put it up there.
Anthony's not the oldest.
No, I don't know. I mean, I'm going to say I am right now, but until I'm disproven.
Anthony, how old are you? May we ask? I thought he was
Yeah.
64.
Yeah, I don't know. I have no idea. Oh yeah, yeah. It's a wonderful thing. To to get that, you know what? And you laugh, but I'll believe that some of these Republicans are against socialism when they turn back their Social Security checks. You know, it's semantics, it's words, it's
Right.
this, it's that, the other. But again, I want to come back to this idea. What's really
64.
what's really bad, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you want to place yourself, for a 13-year-old in a 70-year-old body. What I think is really, really bad, Brian, is the fact that what we have is something, it's two-pronged. We have a reality crisis. And we might have had reality crisis before, but with social media and the power of media today, and the immediacy of media, and that might even be more, because it's all there. This reality, this alternate reality, gets spread very, very quickly. Another story, you know, we focus pretty much on American stories, as I think we should, but one I just found interesting this week, President Macron from France, his wife is much older than him. And
That's right. Yeah.
that upset a lot of people. That's, you know, we're still in the age of ageism and sexism and that kind of thing. And they started a story that his wife was had a gender change. She's an attractive woman. So not that you couldn't be attractive and have a gender change, but that's just how bizarre it is. And people are believing that. And the reason is that, you know, now with your enemies, you can say anything you want. But here's a difference. And you can find this out. I didn't believe it, so I researched it when I was at the museum. Two people who really didn't like one another, big in the founding of America: Thomas Jefferson and John Adams. They came from opposite views, right? Southerner, aristocrat; John Adams, you know, feisty New Englander. And this was a description that if Thomas Jefferson didn't write it, he certainly approved it. An anti-campaign statement. He called Adams was called an old, toothless, foul breath smelling hermaphrodite.
Well,
Now,
you would think he would have bad breath if he was toothless, so that part might be.
But I'm talking about the hermaphrodite. Where the hell did that come from, right?
I said that word today. We were talking about the different classifications, and I said, you don't hear hermaphrodite anymore. I mean, just despite the fact that people are binary, non-binary, or whatever you want, LGBTQ, but I don't hear hermaphrodite at all.
I think probably, and this would just be my guess, I defer to real
There are a
linguists.
few out
that
there.
That has such negative connotations. Do you know what I mean? That you know, I think they're looking. People are looking, you know, for new words to describe, this new America, which doesn't, you know, that's also one of the things that drives Donald Trump. Or I shouldn't say he drives it. That's one of the things he capitalized on. America's fear, its resistance to change and fear of change. Now, there is no question in my mind that there are more gay people in America today in all the other categories, right, that we have than there ever were. And I think that's fine. I think that's wonderful. I think you should be who you are, who you feel you are. But, you know, you've seen them, Brian. God said there's only two genders. You know, well, first of all, I missed that from God. Did he come down and say that? Or maybe I just missed that day. So you have misreadings. But, Brian, to get back to what you were saying before, let's put it like this. You can't dismiss anything as saying we are coup protected. I think that was what I would say.
Right.
Right. That's
Not in this
what
day
I
and
think.
age. We have
I think-
changed completely.
No,
You can't bank
so,
on anything.
You know, it does come down to, you know, and we kind of come here every show, some point here. HLS. I think the one thing that more than anything else two things that killed Carter. Well, I'm not talking about politically. There was a lot of things he did behind, you know, that he didn't do according to well, first of all, the Washington establishment hated him. They hated him because he was an outsider. But I think two things he did, and one was honest. You know, he said, you know, he put his sweater on. He said, let's cut back energy. We didn't want to hear that. And he talked about America, if you remember, being in a general malaise. And that really got people upset because America doesn't have a malaise. Yeah, well, we did at that time. And then the second thing was the hostage crisis, which HLS referenced there. And with the hostage crisis, there is very good indication, almost irrefutable, that Reagan or Reagan's people or the Republican Party sent a special kind of emissary to Tehran and said, look, hold off, we'll give you a better deal. And you do know the day, right, Brian, when the hostages were released?
Right, it was day 444, and it was the day of the inauguration, right?
There you are. So certainly, and yet we find out now, we also find out that Richard Nixon did a similar thing when he was running against Humphrey, that they sent a secret group to there and said, look, you'll get a much better deal from us. And yeah, those the good old days, right? The odd, even days. All right, Brian. One of the things I want to do, and I'm going to start it tonight. I want to try to encourage a little bit more involvement in our, you know, from the group, because I really like what they have to say. So you can comment tonight, but I'm going to put it on this week. I wrote it down, of course, and now, of course, as usual, I can't find it. So give me a second.
That one's your fault.
Oh, I got it right here. All right. So I was reading an article today that I was kind of fascinated with. They were picking objects that captured 2020, right? Everybody, objects that captured 2020. And they listed 4. And I'd like tonight, if you want to comment on it, but I'm going to put it on a couple times on the page this week, just to see what kind of answers come in. I'll give you the 4 that they did, Brian, right? And then you'll see how they stack up. Now remember, this is one columnist's opinion, but so objects that capture 2020. So one, he said, was the QAnon shaman's hat that he wore when he took over.
What a beautiful hat that was.
January 6th. Old Jacob there, his hat. And Jacob now is spending, or is sentenced to 41 months in prison. But I think that's a symbol that certainly carries through, right, on 2020. I think that was a good choice he had.
Yeah.
And he didn't put them in any order. Second was the COVID vaccine syringe. And his argument there was, you know, it's pictured all over, but it's there. And it's, you know, the pro-vaccine against the anti-vaccine.
How about the actual virus with all those red things sticking out?
Well, that could be too. That would be, but I mean, you could argue that. I'm not saying one's better than the other, but that kind of takes in that. He had Jeff. I really think this is kind of cool. Jeff Bezos' rocket,
right?
His penis that he shot into space.
Penis shit.
Which it does. I'm sorry, it does look like a penis. And Judy pointed out one night we were watching a movie on Amazon Prime. And I never really look at this stuff. She's an artist, so she sees it. You know the little curvature under Amazon? Have you ever looked at that? That also looks kind of like a curved penis. So I'm wondering if Jeff Bezos has
a crooked one, or like the curved part of the glands or something.
Yeah, no. It's got like the little arrow on the end, and kind of, you know, it's a bent phallus if you have it that way. So, but you know, I think, and you know, to me that wasn't the worst thing. That was just funny. But Bezos comes back and he thanks his employees for allowing him to do that. Yeah, by paying them $5 an hour. And you see, you know, they're under investigation again about the idea of not allowing breaks, you know, and some other, you know, and the idea, why were they in the warehouses, you know, when the tornado hit, et cetera, et cetera. And this one, I think, was my favorite. I was working on an article for Christmas, and it was about toys of the year you were born. And if any next show is post-Christmas, but you know, we may or may not do one more show. I think we should, Brian, but we'll talk about that later. Might not be on New Year's Day, but we'll figure it out. Anyway, and in 1952, which is the year I was born, a new toy was introduced that's still on the market today. And that was Mr. Potato Head. Now, I'm old enough to remember when you used actual potatoes right? Later, the plastic came in.
Yeah, to
First
stick
you
the
used,
things in there. Yeah.
yeah. I assume you came a little bit
I
later.
came later. I had the plastic thing.
Yeah. So, and it worked out really well because my uncle was one of the largest potato farmers in New Jersey. So I had a lot of potatoes to do Mr. Potato Head with. And then, of course, Mr. Potato Head got lonely, just like Adam in the mythical story of the Bible. So they had to make a Mrs. Potato Head, right? And I remember that. That was a little bit later. And this year, Brian, do you know that they changed the name on the box? It is no longer Mr. Potato Head or Mrs. Potato Head. Do you know what it is
Potato
now?
Head? Potato Head?
What?
Potato Head?
Just Potato Head, so that they can decide their own gender, or the person playing with them can decide their own gender. Now, of course, the conservatives went apeshit over that. But I think that's interesting. So they're the four. Let me repeat them for everybody. You've got the shaman's hat. You've got a COVID vaccine syringe. You've got Jeff Bezos's penile rocket. And you've got no longer Mr. Potato, but Potato Head. Anything come to mind, Brian, that you would suggest for a fifth?
Fifth? I have to think.
I blanked on it. So, I mean,
I'm just trying to think
I'm just
of
interested.
anything that's...
It's not something you think of, that's why I said I want to put it on our page a couple of times and see it, see how people run through it. Something else I would, while you're thinking about it, Brian, another good thing, one of my favorite American writers will always be Dave Barry, the humorist and the columns. And he does an annual thing. He doesn't write much anymore, but he still does his year-end review. It's online. It's in a lot of magazines. It was in the Washington Post magazine. This one, and I don't know if it's me or him, this one wasn't as funny. And I mean, I've read them and actually laughed out loud because there wasn't a whole lot of funny stuff. It wasn't a whole lot of funny stuff.
Nick Drake, too, so.
But you might get an idea there of something. So, this is a Christmas message, right? A Christmas show, I guess. And, Christmas is a time of, like I said, I think it's a time of reflection and traditions and all that type of thing.
And sales.
I guess, for a lot of people, I think, I'm not a big fan of thoughts and prayers. I think action is where it is. But sometimes you can. I think, I don't know about you, Brian, but I kind of paused just to think about the 800,000 Americans. I almost want to say 800,000 families, but I know that, some families were hit with more than one death who weren't around to celebrate this Christmas. You think about, will next Christmas, and I think it's something to think about, what will America look like next Christmas? And it doesn't matter what you say, it doesn't matter what I say. It does matter what we do, though. And when I say you, I don't mean you and me. I'm talking about all of us, because it isn't on solid ground, right?
No.
It isn't on solid ground, and
what bothers me, Dave, is I think most people still have this idea that we're going to pull it out in the fourth quarter, and as they always do. But I don't know that that's guaranteed. Remember, this is like 41, and you don't really know if you're going to take Hitler out.
And you still got all these other things floating around, because it's almost like, it does get overwhelming. But let's say you do get the pandemic under control, then you still have the politics, right? Let's say you get the politics under control, you still got the pandemic. Let's say you get them both under control, you still have climate change. Let's say you somehow miraculously get that under control. You have the threat of more pandemics, right? Then let's say you somehow get that under control. Then you have economic inequality. Then you get that, it's boom, but doom, but doom, but doom, but doom. But the only thing you can't do is you can't just say, oh, well, I'm going to sit here and watch it.
Dave,
you have to get out and do something.
Check. Let's go back one.
Sure.
Will we be around? Because, Guy has always said that, we're pretty close. I don't know that we're going to be out of here in 1 year.
No, I don't know enough, Brian.
It's eating away, and it has the possibility, but we still have a little bit of time. But But in the end, we really don't at all anyway. None of us do. And as a whole, given the acceleration of climate change, you're right. And by the way, I don't even know this climate change is going to kill us, because what we have on the streets here, that you look at January 6th, and I think I'm more afraid of that.
Well, I think, don't you think, though, in some ways, Brian, I don't mean
It's all
directly
the same
or indirectly.
thing.
Yeah,
Stupidity's
climate
killing us.
change. Okay, so climate change is not going to affect, it's going to affect low-lying communities first, probably, right? I mean,
Right, especially if
and-
that ice
and so
shelf
you're gonna
breaks.
get-
I almost want it to break off. Let's just get it over with, and
So
it's
it's
just
gonna
like
come, it's gonna come
COVID.
there,
You just
and then
teach them a
then
lesson.
you're going to be fighting over land, right? And
Right.
you're going to have problems with the rich. Again, back to not that this the movie that I watched. They actually have it's kind of funny. They have a cryogenic ship they can save. I don't know if Kim might remember, or whoever else watched the movie. I don't know I think it was 200 or 2,000 they could save. The scientist guy, or not the scientist, but the business guy had set it up, and they get out, and and even that was so real, because both Bezos and Musk are saying, they've given up on Earth. They're saying we've got to go to space. Well, okay.
Right,
You gonna take
Veg
us
would
all?
know. Veg, not to bring up, tough material, but we know what you went through last month or whatever, and it's just, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Take it from
Oh,
Veg.
I think collectively, nobody knows. Collectively, though, Brian, if I had to answer, I think we'll be here as a world. I think we'll be here as a country. I think the question is, will we be closer to the end or closer to avoiding the end? And that's what we really don't know.
This song is perfect for where or when, even though it's kind of like a love story, but for my father's era and your father's era, but good song. Very beautiful song.
And, and that's interesting you would say that. I wonder, Brian, we can't go back, but, if we'd ask our fathers, how did they see the world? I mean, I always, my dad was of the generation. I mean, we had talks, but they were more about sports and, some other things, not real philosophical talks, because, you just didn't back in those days. But, I wonder, because, I mean, he was born into a world where you didn't fly, right? Where man didn't fly. He saw men land on the moon. He went through the Depression,
He
through
knew
the
about
war.
World War I and what that meant, or could have meant.
So what, when he left, when I say, when he died, it would have been interesting just to say, Dad, what do you think, man? It's a world.
No, he
you
doesn't
leave in the
live
world-
next to a jazz club, but I do believe there's a red barn right next to Dave.
Let me put that. All the music you hear is courtesy of Brian Weinstein. I played music with him,
Right.
and his tastes are beyond eclectic.
Dave and
don't
I
know
played
jazz.
everything, every song, every time. That's why we didn't last very long in our bands.
No, you didn't last very long because you were always hollering to people. I was the nice one. Oh, no, it wasn't.
Yeah.
I guess I was the one who told them off. Just to finish that thought about my dad, what do you think, would he have said? I don't know. I do know, if you're talking about family, Christmas time, think about family. I do know now, I have 2 grandchildren. Audrey is very concerned about the world, right? One of my greatest pleasures, I guess, is in Australia. Her 2 years there, as she matured, she's become quite the little radical, and I hope that she takes that down in Alabama and makes the changes, or works for the changes that I hope she will. Owen, on the other hand, is just around for the day. Nothing wrong with that. If he's playing sports, and he's happy, he's with friends. But Audrey, I know, is much more concerned about the future of the world than I was in her age. So I can, and a lot of young people are. We used to talk about that, when we were on a couple of shows, different shows than this, and we'd have the younger people on, and for a point of me wanted to snap out and say, "Don't be so damn pessimistic." But if you really look at it, what do they have to be optimistic about?
Nothing.
They really,
Maybe
because
they
don't
have to
have
look at the history of things. We seem to squeak by in the fourth quarter, but it doesn't guarantee anything anymore. because that's
No,
just
and-
our
and-
particular
and
history.
Even if we do all those things I said before, we all have our, what should I say, small issues. Not that they're that small. Mine has been for years getting guns in America under control. And even if we did all the other things, we'd still be shooting at each other and killing each other. And did you see the story? Again, it's horrible being a policeman. I wish we lived in a world where we didn't need them. I wish they would be perfect. They're not. Of course, we had the one found guilty, which I think is a just verdict, because God damn it, I don't care how upset you are. You got to know the difference. If you're a police woman or a policeman, you have to know the difference between your gun and a taser. That's a bottom line. And if you don't, then and you kill someone, that's some form of manslaughter or murder. But the one that got me is, did you see about the young girl that was shot by police while she was in a dressing room out in L.A.?
Was it? Yes, I heard about that.
Now,
14-year-old
you're gonna
girl or
tell
something
me-
like that.
Right. So, man, this has been kind of a pessimistic show. But that's
No,
okay,
it's been a
'cause you know why?
realistic show.
And I think, and there you are.
On the
I
one
want you to leave.
night that you would expect us to be positive,
Well,
it's still about truth.
I think, and there you are. And the truth is as you find it. And I said, the only reason that I'm against pessimism is this. If you're pessimistic and you do nothing, that's bad. If you're optimistic and you do nothing, that's bad. Just do something. So that's my last words for today. Nike says just do it. So I don't want to rip off a company that uses slave labor all around the world. So I'll change it a little bit. I can't have just here's a do something. Do something.
Do something.
Do something. Thanks for having me on, Brian. As always, a pleasure. And we'll talk, ladies and gentlemen. Usually what happens is on New Year's Eve, Brian goes back to his home planet. And they have a thing there. It's kind of the equivalent here of, I don't know what you would say. It's sort of like a Spanish fly, like an aphrodisiac, and sort of like a supercharged cocaine. And it's what he takes. And he has like a 2-day debauched party. But maybe we can get Brian. Maybe we can do the show before New Year's Eve. I know you couldn't do the show in the condition you get there, but that's the way it is. And that's your dance instructor, isn't it, Brian? Isn't that the person up there who gave you
And
dance
we're all
lessons?
dancing tonight.
Let's shut this show down, man. Everybody,
All right, that
thanks
sounds
for
like
being
a
here.
good
We
idea.
appreciate it as always. And I hope that next Christmas, America, ourselves, we're all in better shape than we are tonight.
Yeah. All right. So let's change it up for a second. As the song says, brave men tell the truth. We try to do that, ladies and gentlemen. Is that all you can do these days? We can't guarantee you anything. You can't guarantee us. We can't guarantee you. But it's all for free here, as it should be. And check out Veg's channel because it's great. I was watching your video actually this morning, Veg, I think. Yeah.
Brian, I hate to interrupt.
Uh-oh.
Just tell me it's a light. Just tell me it's a light. It looks like, and this is scary. Did you ever see the show V? Do you know what I'm talking about when I say
I
it?
think I've seen the trailer. to it.
Basically, it was the aliens come and take us over, and it was a play on the idea of, a fascist world coming in. And Brian, when you bent down just now in your forehead, put the camera back on you. Take it off me, please. And no, it's gone. Wow, it was just. I guess it was just like, no, it's back.
That.
It looks like you have. It looks like you
My
have
widow,
a V.
I used to have a widow's
carved-
peak.
No, that's not hair, Brian. I think that's a V carved in your head.
No, what happens? There used to be a whole mat of hair until my body was pumping a lot of testosterone out, and it still does. And this is what happens. You know what I mean?
You get a
It's
V
just-
in your head.
You get a V because that was all like a carpet of hair follicles, and then the testosterone keeps building up every day, and it just
You sure?
makes the
you sure
follicles
that's-
smaller
you're
and
sure-
smaller
you're
each
ab-
day,
you're-
and then
you're
that's
absolutely
it.
sure that's not an alien V.
I'm 90% sure that is.
But you're not 100% sure. So it could be an
No,
alien V.
no, I'm not sure. But yeah,
All right, well,
that
you
used
know
to be a
what?
widow's
Yeah.
peak right here. That was a widow's peak. You know.
You were a widow?
me see if I have another picture.
Wait a minute. You're telling me you're supposed to be this righteous guy, and you were peeking in at widows? What were you doing?
I don't know if I have a picture of myself when I was young.
That's
Well,
how
this
much
is younger, but that's when I was 29 or 30. I had like still kind of a widow's peak there. You know, I got old, but I'm still pumping out that testosterone. I don't know what the deal is. It just doesn't stop. It's getting
Brian.
difficult.
I'm sorry. We've been friends for years, but I can't. I'm worried about that V. So you continue to show pictures of yourself, and I'm gonna go give some thoughts and prayers that the V is not an alien marking on your head.
You know, that
Bye, everybody.
there was lost.
Bye, everybody.
Yeah. All went away. Who knows what it'll look like in a year if I'm still around. Blame the tea. A better flick. Apropos, I guess I have to finish these out. Yep, Widow's Peak. Thank you, Brian. Yeah, thank you, Karen. Thank you, everybody. Go Rotund. I don't know. Just tired. Real tired. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Can I do anything to make this more interesting or something positive? Maybe some song that'll make us positive. Oh, for God's sakes. Something you wouldn't expect. I don't know. Yeah, why not this? Victory, right? Victory scalp. Here we go. The man.
It's not unusual to be loved by anyone. It's not unusual to have fun with anyone. But when I see you hanging about with anyone, it's not unusual to see me cry. I wanna die. It's not unusual to go out at any time. But when I see you out and about, it's such a crime. If you should ever wanna be loved by anyone, it's not unusual, it happens every day. No matter what you say, you'll find it happens all the time. Love will never do what you want to. Why can't this crazy love be more? It's not unusual to be mad with anyone. It's not unusual to be sad with anyone. But if I ever find that you've changed at any time, it's not unusual to find that